Troubleshooting port security. Port security is one of the extremely simple ways to circumvent so many security vulnerabilities in a layer 2 network. It's just silly that not everybody in the world has this enabled. The idea of port security is that you can apply restrictions in one of two ways. One, you can restrict the number of MAC addresses per port. So you can say, okay, if I have a normal network and we've got computers plugging into it, then there should only be one MAC address per port. Or if I've got a little more advanced network using updated technology with voice over IP, maybe you could have two MAC addresses per port. But set that limit. That's the one that's the insanely simple way to secure your network, because you should never have more than two devices, and if you do, that means somebody has plugged something in that they shouldn't. A lot of times it's another switch where they're connecting devices that are not authorized to be in your network, or it could be a wireless access point. I just had this happen last week where I was at a school where somebody just plugged in a wireless access point. Why? I don't know. But essentially, it started handing out 192.168 addresses. It was one of those all-inclusive wireless access routers. And thankfully, port security went and shut down their interface. Now, it got us involved. That's why I was involved, is because they're like, hey, my port doesn't work anymore. You can have it go by default in shutdown, protect, or restrict mode. Shutdown being the default disables their port not in a shutdown state but in an error disable state, meaning that you actually as an administrator have to come in, do a shut, then a no shut to turn that one back on. Protect and restrict modes are a little kinder and gentler. Essentially, if you say there's a max of one MAC address per interface and they exceed it, essentially it just says those extra MAC addresses beyond the one simply won't work. Protect mode says I'm going to not make them work and you'll never know about it. Restrict mode says I'm not going to make them work, and I'm going to send a little log file and actually track how many times this has happened on a given interface. What MAC address per port is yet another layer of security where I say not just how many MAC addresses are allowed, but only this MAC address allowed. You can do that in one of two ways. You can type in the MAC address of the device and say this 00A0:1, etc., is the only one that's allowed, or you can use that feature called sticky, where it takes whatever MAC address is currently on the port, puts it in the running configuration as the only allowed MAC address on that port. Setting port security up is pretty straightforward. I just booted up a switch. Let me just do a show MAC address table just to see where I've got some addresses to play with. Yep, that's the interface. So let's go into interface fast Ethernet 2015. I'll do switch port security, and we'll do so much to do. Let's go with maximum, right? Because we've got a whole bunch on here. I'll do a maximum of 2 MAC addresses, which should cause it to go down right away. But it doesn't. Why? I'll do a show run interface fast Ethernet 2/0/15, not 16. And I can see the maximum 2 is in there, but we've fallen victim to the number one issue that happens all the time. You configure port security, but forget to actually turn it on. There's a command that actually turns it on, interface, which probably won't take right now. Let's do switch port security. Hit enter. It says, that's what I was saying, we're probably not going to take it because it's a dynamic port. So we have to do switch port mode access, meaning you can't do port security on trunk interfaces, right? So switch port mode access now, switch port security. That flips it on, sets it to a maximum of 2. Now, by the way, if you just leave this at default, let's do a quick show port security. You can see that I was sitting here scratching my head. I know all of you were like, shouldn't something happen like now? And it did. So you can see maximum address count 2. Immediately it comes up and says port security violation error. That's because we have way more than 2 MAC addresses on that interface. Now if you just leave it at default and just type in switch port security, and I'm just giving you things that I've run into that can go wrong, not necessarily in the bullet list behind here. But let me do a no switch port security maximum 2, right? So the only command that I've got under there, show run interface, is switch port security. Let's do that, show switch port security. Notice it defaults to 1. So if you just type in this one command, bam, you're locking it down to 1 MAC address, which could cause it to disable. Now, I can do a show interface fast Ethernet 2/0/15 in order to tell that this thing is error disabled. This is one that's so easy to miss. So you're on the exam, right? Or you're in the real world. You're doing a show IP interface brief, my totally favorite command on all Cisco devices. And I'm looking, I'm like, you know, you're getting all these people, they're like, oh, you know, whine, I can't get on the internet, whatever the case is. And you're like, well, that's because you're not plugged in, right? It doesn't show you right here that the interface is actually error disabled. So doing that show interface right there is one way to see it. Or you can do a show interface status. Not stat, status. And that's another way that you're able to pick it out of a lineup really quick and see that it's error disabled on that interface. So you've got to do that shut and no shut to get that back on. Other things that can go wrong: static MAC address misconfiguration. I got to stop trying to underline with my mouse right here. Static MAC address misconfiguration. Type the wrong one in, obviously it's going to disable it. You exceed the maximum MAC addresses because you forgot to account for IP phones, or forgot that, oh, there's a wireless access point plugged into that interface. And this is another big one: static MAC address or sticky MAC addresses are not saved. Meaning when you go in there, let's do lost my interface. There we go. Let's say we go in here and do a interface 2015. Let's do, I just cannot type that interface. Switch port security maximum, let's just do 30, right? And then I'm going to do switch port security MAC address sticky, right? And then I'll do a shut and a no shut to bring that interface back online. There we go. And what it should do, if everything is working correctly, and let's do a show port security interface 2015, and I can see that it's enabled. I've got a maximum of 30, shows the last source MAC addresses in there. So I mean, we're looking good, like everything is good to go. So let's do a show run interface 2015. There we go. Look at that. Show run interface. And I see these things, these MAC addresses starting to show up on there as it's learning them and it's refreshing them as sticky MAC addresses. But if I do a show startup configuration, right, and scroll down to fast Ethernet 2/0/15, they're not there. If you go in and do the sticky MAC addresses, you need to do regular savings of your configurations. Regular savings. So you can, I mean, you could do scripting, you can do all kinds of different things to get these MAC addresses at least initially saved in there as the sticky MAC addresses, because they're going to be stored in the running config until you do that. You now understand how to troubleshoot port security. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.